friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to talk about the grapes I grow, how and why I grow them, because I've had a few people asking me this question ever since they saw this picture right here on the community page here on YouTube. Now, a lot of people want tips on how best to grow grapes. Well, I can't really answer that question because it's all going to vary depending on your climate and where you're located. In your zone, of course, will have a say in that. The climate as a whole is what really matters, not just the zone. Zone only makes up a small portion of what type of climate you're in. But let's talk about these grapes, why I grow them and how I grow them, and what kind I'm growing. So all the grapes in this particular basket are all the Niagara Whites. That's mostly what I'm growing. Now, when it comes to these, you have to understand my climate. We live very close to a rainforest. So we're one of the wettest places in the whole United States. At this point, we are in more of a dry phase at 120 inches annual average rainfall. Now, if you don't know how that plays out into your climate, look up your own annual average rainfall. So when I first considered even doing grapes, I actually didn't think grapes would do well here because I grew up on the eastern side of Washington State, which is a very different climate. You would think they were completely different states or even completely different countries. So the west side of the mountain range where we are now is very different. So where I grew up in Wenatchee, Washington, is grapes and peaches and apples and pears and all kinds of fruit like that just do great. That's why you hear a lot about Washington apples. Apples do good here too on our side, but we don't get the same size and quantity that you can get in eastern Washington. Pears do okay here too, but again, it's the same thing. You tend to get bigger and more pears over there, and we just can't seem to get peaches to grow worth beans here. But berries love cool, wet climates, so we can do really well with berries. So anyway, that brings me to the grapes. So we were at our local nursery, I don't know how many years ago now, 7, 8 years ago, that I bought the grapes as starts. They were 2-year-old plants, and I noticed they had those. Now, whatever our local nursery carries is going to be something that typically will do well here. So we trust them more when it comes to that. And these do well. I actually bought 3 different varieties. So the Niagara Whites I bought 2 of those. I bought 1 Buffalo Blue, which did pretty good for a couple of years, was actually the first one to actually get grapes, and they were beautiful. And then the other one was an Amber. Now the Amber looks very much like this. There's a slightly different flavor, but they never actually turn amber. Now I know why this is. So Niagara Whites in general can be a pretty sweet grape if grown in the right climate. And if I grew them in the greenhouse, I'm sure that they would get a lot sweeter than they do here. But our growing season is so cool, and it is so short that my grapes, these Niagara Whites, don't have a chance to take on that same sweetness they normally would. The flavor is still really good. They'll get ripe, they'll get squishy, but they never really get sweet. But if we wait too long, they will all fall off, or the birds will eat them, or the raccoons will come around and steal them. So we have to get them off the vines while they're there. Niagara Whites are actually the common grape used in making white grape juice, but the grape juice I get out of mine is very tart. So what I have found with these type of grapes here is that they make an excellent wine. So most of your wine grapes are grapes that never get really sweet anyway, which is why they make great wine grapes, because you have to add sugar to it anyway. And so it makes an excellent wine. The best wine I've ever made was from my own homegrown grapes when I've used the juice in its raw form. So let me talk a little bit about how I preserve them first before I go on. So what I do, I find out works best, is I store the grapes. As soon as I pick them, I put them in 1-gallon bags like this. These are reusable bags. I was using the standard plastic Ziploc, but they never make it, especially through something like this, through 1 year. So I bought these. I prefer silicone, but it's hard to find silicone in a gallon size bag. And I like having the gallon size bag, not only because they're bigger, but it helps me keep track better of the amount that I actually have put up. And so that way I can immediately just put them up. I don't have to deal with them right away. And plus, since I'm going to be juicing these, freezing them first is the easiest way to be able to juice them, as well as to keep the juice raw for the best flavor and quality of juice or wine. I can just put it off until I'm ready for that process, and then I can get to the wine making. At least this way I can quickly get them put up. So now, how I grow them. I know people are wanting all these special tips, but I do not grow them in the traditional vineyard style way of growing them. I still get a great harvest. And here's another point I want to bring up. 13, 14, 15 gallons may not sound like a lot of grapes, but I don't have a big vineyard. All of this that I'm growing and doing is right here on our little shy 1/3 acre piece in the neighborhood. So in order to make the most of our space, Patrick had put some beams around the deck, and I let my grapes grow up there. So I planted them directly in the ground on either side of the steps that go out into the main garden area, and then the other 2 plants were along just the one side. We didn't plant them along the other side because that's where our septic is. But you look at the photos of our deck, you would think that we had plants planted all the way around. Currently, I don't even have 4 plants. I only have 3 because unfortunately the buffalo blue one year just up and died. I have no idea why. The purpose was to allow the grapes to grow up those posts and across the beams, and that's what they've done. Now what that does is it serves a couple of purposes. Since we are in a neighborhood, and even with our fencing, especially now that we don't have the hedges in the back anymore, those are going to be completely gone. They got cut way down to 2 feet, and now the neighbor's going to take them out altogether. Those are his hedges. He's got to do what he's got to do. So now we're not going to have that privacy between us and him, or us and the neighbors clear 2 streets down, because I can see straight through my sliding glass door 2 streets over. And so having, in the summertime when those grapevines fill in, our back deck is completely private, and I love that. I wish it would just stay green all year round. That would be nice. But maybe one of these days I'll talk about what I did to increase our privacy level back there without those hedges, and that's still going to be a work in progress as well. But anyway, so that's why I grow them the way they do, and they just become this green wall. But if you're really wanting to make it for ease of harvest, you're not going to grow them that tall, and you're going to keep them pruned up from the main stalk so that they kind of make more of a T shape, as you'll see if you ever look at a vineyard that has a very specific way of growing them. Now, every year I do cut my grapevines way back. I cut them way back, and every year I try to cut back more, and yet they still will explode and get bigger every year, even with as much as I take out. I even cut out some of the old vines so that new ones can come in. Now, as far as fertilizing, of course, we are organic. We don't add any chemical fertilizers or pest control or anything like that. The only pests I have issues with on these is once they start getting ripe, is the birds and the raccoons. But other than that, they're fine. I just throw whatever down around the grapevines. When we clean out the chicken coop a couple times a year, we just take that's some of the stuff we'll throw down there right at the base of the plants. And through the whole year, I'll just throw whatever down there. If I just got done straining out some vinegar, I'll throw that down there. What the chickens don't eat, we'll compost and feed the soil. I don't do anything special. Once in a great while, I might put a cup of blood meal at the base, but then I have to quickly cover it up with something because the dog will try to eat the blood meal, and it's really not good for him. So I usually try to cover it with a big pile of something that will cover up the smell and help keep them from getting into it. So other than those things, throwing whatever kitchen scraps I have and the chicken coop bedding, I don't do anything else special. So if you're trying to figure out what grapes are best for you, I really recommend you talk to local people with your local nursery. Find out if they know, do a little research online, and then you can also learn how best to grow them. Grapes love to climb on anything, especially if it's something more natural. They will climb right up trees, and I have heard, I don't know how true this is or how accurate, But I have once heard that if you grow grapes around your other fruit trees, not only are you making the most of that space, you can get 7 times the amount of grapes doing it that way. I like what I'm doing. I know that what we get is plenty enough grapes for us, especially for the way that we use it. So it's all going to be a matter of choice. It's going to be a matter of your climate. And I can't tell you that. And people come in and think that I know what they can grow in their own personal climate. I don't know, and I don't have time to research that. I know what works for us in our very cool, very wet climate here on the peninsula of Washington State. So you've got to do that research for yourself. It's just a matter of looking up, typing into your browser something like, what grapes grow best in, then put your city and state. And you should be able to pull up some information in your browser by doing it that way. And again, if you know any local gardeners that are growing grapes, or talk to your local nursery, these are the people that you can tap into for information. And if you're interested in winemaking, even if you don't drink, winemaking is an excellent skill to have. It is not that hard to do, and it can have many, many purposes, and it can be a very cheap way that you can do various things, because your homemade wine can be used to marinate, make extracts from, saute with, barter with, and so on. I actually have a video where I talk about the many uses for homemade wine, even if you don't drink, that I will go ahead and link down below. And it might even be in the playlist that I'll also put down below, and that is the whole playlist on winemaking. So you can check that out and learn about how I do it. I don't use any kind of wine yeast or bread yeast. I have a unique way that I make our wines. It's easy, it's pretty much free, and it works great for us. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and it just kind of at least gave you an idea what we do, why we do, what we grow. But it's just for us. It may not work best for you to do it the way we do it, or to grow the kind that we grow. So do your own research so you can get started on doing something like this. The thing I love about grapes, though, is they are climbers. You can do a lot of vertical gardening with those to make the most of your space. And please share with us down below, if you're growing grapes or you're picking them wild, what kind of grapes are they? What is your favorite to grow? What is your climate, so people know what to compare to if they're wanting to come in there and learn from you as well, because you might be closer to their own climate. So make sure you share that information as well. And by the way, where I grew up in Eastern Washington, Concord grapes grew wild. I don't think I've ever seen a Concord grape on this side of the mountains, ever. But they grew wild over there. You could find them pretty much anywhere. So anyway, share with us down below, and thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.